It's fair to say, Collingwood have had their fair share of the shorter end of the stick when it comes to the draft for the most part. However, what has helped keep the Pies relevant in the quest to the ultimate honours has been timely trades over the course of the last 20 years or so. Let's get into it. Starting with number 10, we have Jordan Ruffhead. Now this may come as a little bit of an offbeat selection within the top 10, but heck, that's what I'm here for. When you consider we only had to give up pick 75 for an AFL tested player in Jordan Ruffhead with the great leadership abilities that he possessed, it was hard for this trade to end up as a failure for the Pies. Now you won't remember Ruffy as someone who tore the stat sheet apart, but he almost allowed Darcy Moore and Jeremy Howe to what they do best as elite interceptors of the game. You could also look at Ruffy in the same light that we saw Nathan Murphy, a great one-on-one player who risked it all whenever he stepped the field. And you could also make the case that Murphy was the protege for Ruffhead under his tutelage. Ruffy's best game in the black and white was during that treacherous 2021 season, where Ruffy had 21 touches and a career high 7 intercept marks against Port in what I remember as a painful 1-point loss. Moving on. Let's look at number 9, Patrick Lipinski. Lipper was traded to Collingwood from the Bulldogs for a lowly pick, just number 43. And while Lipper has had his adversities as a Pies player over the course for the first few seasons, he has certainly provided some return as a winger/high half forward flanker. Being a part of the premiership team in 2023, Lipper has been more than serviceable in 2024, illustrating his ability to impact the game in round 6 against Port Adelaide, where he had a career high 4 goals and a massive win within the context at the point of that year for the Pies. Number 8, Tom Mitchell. Tom Mitchell came along from Hawthorn as a Brownlow medalist and had this proclivity to always put it on the Pies whenever we came up against Tom Mitchell and the Hawks. And while this trade could be seen as a short-term plug, it would have to go down as one of the best trades when it comes to immediate return in the following year. Titch came across to the Pies along with pick 25, which wasn't used in the end, and this was by way of a 3-team trade. The Pies gave up Oliver Henry, pick 41 and pick 50, with both picks being passed on to build on the capital or the draft capital for Hawthorn. Titch was brought in to fill the void that was a lack of contested balls in the Collingwood midfield. Titch would show his greatest tools on display throughout the course of the final series in 2023. Mitchell's biggest game, just the 2023 Grand Final, where he collected 24 disposals, 10 contested possessions, 7 clearances, 7 score involvements, and 3 coaches' votes, along with the coveted Premiership medallion to validate his performances and the trade as well. Number 7, we have Darren Jolly. You could make the case that Jolly was one of the final pieces that would accentuate the Pies' push to Premiership contention in 2010. Jolly essentially took over the ruck duties from Josh Fraser from pretty much around 12 and onwards. And I must say, it is a bittersweet feeling as a Collingwood fan, knowing that the piece to the puzzle would come at a cost. The cost was depriving Josh Fraser of a premiership medal, a stalwart of the club, and eventually deciding to pack his bags up and move to Gold Coast for a different look. And some might point out that the longevity of this trade fell in the favour of the recipients. Sydney, they end up taking Lewis Jetta with pick 14, and Hawthorn, who acquired Ben Stratton with pick 46. However, despite those factors being considered into the outcome of this trade, I'm sure any club is willing to give up their future to a certain extent if it means it strengthens their journey towards the Premiership Cup. And I tell you what, it certainly did work out for the Pies in 2010. Am I right? Number 6. Now this one's going to be a tandem in James Clement and Brody Holland, 2 players who swung over from Fremantle and were both integral in the early 2000s for the Collingwood Football Club. They endured the heartbreaking grand final losses and were pivotal of bringing through the younger lads in the mid-2000s in your Pendleburys and Dale Thomases. Jimmy's best game for the Pies would arguably be against the Cats in 2005, collecting a career-high 29 disposals and 2 Brownlow votes for his troubles, while Brody Holland had an illustrious career himself and has now become a prominent voice and spokesman for the Collingwood Football Club when it comes to the performances on the field. At number 5, Darcy Cameron. Now, how DC came to the Pies basically as an untried ruckman during his time at Sydney is personally bewildering to say the least. Booker has come into the Pies and been a lock for the squad since 2021. Playing as a ruck forward for 21 and 22, averaging a goal a game, and in 2023 we saw DC take on the responsibility to be the main ruckman, with Mason Cox pinching in. 2024 marks a season so far where he is the best intercept marking ruckman in the league and is prized for his fearlessness in aerial contests. It would certainly be fair to suggest that DC is primed for a top 3 finish in the 2024 Copeland medal and all but a lock for the Darren Mullane Memorial Trophy. Number 4, Jeremy Howe. Howie was used as a swingman more frequently towards the back end of his time at the D's. However, coming into the Pies, there was some sort of gentleman's agreement that maybe Howie would be a full-time forward. And quite frankly, that changed quite quickly as Jezza was thrusted into the backline and would reach career highs in his disposals, averaging 19 touches a game along with a career high in intercept marks, sitting at 2.3 for his first season at Collingwood. Since then, Howie has continued to remain as a mainstay for the Pies defence, while he still remains as a looming threat when asked to do a job in the forward line. Boy, wouldn't it be good to have two Jeremy Howes, one in the back line, one in the forward line. When it's all said and done, Howie will finish his career being remembered as the most decorated player in the aerial space. An innate ability to leap seamlessly onto someone's shoulders and capture the ball at its highest point. All I have to say is, how did he do that?
Yeah, so therefore he's just having to deal with that, and it'll take 12 months or so.
Let's talk about the top three, and starting with number 3, Bobby Hill. Bobby came to the Pies after overcoming his own adversities outside of football, having been diagnosed with testicular cancer. It was obvious that nothing was going to shake him after what he had to go through in the life outside of footy. And guess what? He proved that in the biggest way in 2023, doubling his scoring output from his previous seasons. And how can we forget that performance in the grand final, forever dubbed as Norm Smith, kicking 5 goals in a granny and taking that remarkable mark. Fast forward to 2024, while we hoped Bobby would find some more consistency throughout the regular home and away season games, he has had some best on-ground performances and is yet to find that pure consistency as a small forward. However, it is hard to knock him in that difficult role that is the small forward role, and if this lack of consistency means he makes up for it in another final series in hopefully the very near future where he can model another Norm Smith performance, then hey, I can't be mad as a Pies fan. Number 2, Anthony Rocca. Now the Pies threw the absolute kitchen sink at Big Rocca as he had made it clear to the Sydney Swans of his desires to return back home and be closer to his brother, who is another piece of furniture that is forever embedded at the Collingwood Football Club, Sav Rocca. Big Rock was traded over from Sydney to Collingwood in exchange for pick number 14, who ended up being Brett O'Farrell, who played 21 games, pick 33, Will Sangster, 2 games, Ben Wilson, 4 games at AFL level, and Mark Orchard, 41 games at AFL level. An unfortunate return for Sydney, while Collingwood reaped the benefits. Rocca's best game for the Pies came up against our bogey team of the last 20 to 30 years in the Hawks. Dating back to 2006, where the Pies just fell short of top 4 contention, Big Rock had 18 touches and kicked 8 goals straight. And it must be said, the Pies have been screaming out for a true power forward like Anthony Rocca. And while we have been graced with Travis Cloke and Darcy Moore, at least in his earlier parts of his career, it must be said the key position stocks for the Collingwood forward line has been very few and far between. Also, I just want to mention that Big Rock has recently been diagnosed with a form of cancer and will undergo his greatest battle in life to date. The Pies Footy Army is sending all the love your way, Rock. You've got this, mate. And finally, number 1, one of the Collingwood sweethearts, Jamie Elliot. Now this one's a little bit messy. Collingwood had to buy Billy's draft rights off of GWS as they were setting up the foundations leading into their inaugural season by pre-listing players before their season had even begun. What that exactly entails, I'm unsure of from a monetary standpoint, but in the end, the Pies gave up pick 25, who ended up being Seb Ross, who plays for St Kilda, a respectable footballer, and in return was a complete utter steal for the Pies. Collingwood received Martin Clark for his second stint at Collingwood, Jared Witts, who while we didn't get what we hoped for out of him, he has certainly lived up to expectations as a skipper for the Gold Coast Suns. And of course, Jamie Elliot. While we had to trade for Billy, if he hadn't been pre-listed by GWS, it was likely he would have been taken around pick 15 to pick 20 in his respective draft. Billy has a highlight package that would rival any AFL footballer in their time, but none are greater than this moment, after the siren versus one of Collingwood's greatest rivals, Essendon. In 2024, Jamie Elliot has been a shining light for Collingwood in what has been an otherwise dampened year due to injuries and perhaps a lack of hunger/desire. We'll save that conversation for another day, but if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. Go Pies.